When you're nurturing your tomato plants and notice the leaves curling, it can be disheartening. I've been there, standing in my garden, staring at twisted leaves and wondering where I went wrong. Tomato plants are tough yet sensitive, and curled leaves can signal anything from a minor stressor to a larger issue that needs immediate attention. Today, let me share with you the most common causes behind curling tomato leaves, how to fix them, and even better, how to prevent it from happening in the first place. If you're a tomato enthusiast like me, be sure to subscribe to Botanical Bliss for more plant care tips and tricks. It's a great way to stay ahead of gardening challenges while making your garden thrive. One of the most common reasons for curling leaves is environmental stress. I've noticed this firsthand when the weather suddenly shifts. Excessive heat, strong winds, or too much sun can cause your tomato leaves to curl inward. This is the plant's way of protecting itself, reducing surface area to minimize water loss. A particularly hot day can trigger this response, but thankfully it's usually temporary. If your tomatoes are getting stressed like this, I recommend offering them a bit of shade during the hottest parts of the day. I use lightweight row covers or even just a simple sheet to shield them from the harshest sun. Tomatoes are incredibly sensitive to how much water they receive. Both overwatering and underwatering can cause leaf curling. I've had seasons where I watered a bit too enthusiastically, and the result was swollen, curling leaves. On the flip side, letting the soil dry out too much can lead to similar problems as the plant struggles to conserve moisture. To find the right balance, I always check the soil before watering. I press my finger about 2 inches into the soil. If it feels dry, it's time to water. And when I do water, I make sure it's deep and thorough, encouraging the roots to grow strong and healthy. Consistency is the key here. Irregular watering schedules are often the culprit behind curling leaves. Tomatoes are heavy feeders, and they're quick to show you when something's off with their diet. Leaf curling can often be a sign of nutrient deficiencies or even an excess of certain nutrients. I've had this happen when I overdid it with nitrogen-based fertilizers. The plants grew lush and green, but the leaves started curling under from the overload. Potassium deficiency, on the other hand, can cause edges of the leaves to curl and become brittle. To avoid these issues, I stick to a balanced fertilizer and feed my tomatoes regularly, but sparingly. Compost and well-rotted manure have been my go-to solutions, as they provide a slow and steady release of nutrients. Sometimes curling leaves are a sign of an unwanted guest in your garden. Pests like aphids, whiteflies, and spider mites feed on tomato plants by sucking the sap, causing leaves to curl and distort. I once discovered a massive aphid infestation on my tomatoes that had gone unnoticed for weeks, and by the time I caught it, the damage was significant. To tackle pests, I always start with a simple spray of water to knock them off the plant. If that doesn't work, I turn to neem oil or insecticidal soap, both effective and safe for the environment. Regularly inspecting your plants and acting quickly is crucial when dealing with pests. Unfortunately, not all leaf curling can be fixed with a bit of water or fertilizer. Some diseases are the underlying cause and they require a more proactive approach. Curly top virus, for example, is a common disease spread by beet leafhoppers. Once a plant is infected, there's no cure, and it's best to remove the plant to prevent the disease from spreading. Another common issue is tomato mosaic virus, which can cause curling, yellowing, and mottling of leaves. Prevention is the best strategy here. I always sanitize my gardening tools and avoid handling plants when they're wet to reduce the risk of spreading disease. One problem that caught me off guard early in my gardening journey was herbicide drift. If herbicides are being sprayed nearby, even a small amount can drift onto your plants and cause the leaves to curl, twist, and deform. This is a problem I've faced when my neighbors decided to treat their lawn on a windy day. To avoid this, I've made it a point to discuss spraying schedules with neighbors, and to place my garden in a spot that's less exposed to potential drift. If your plants do get affected, flushing the soil with water can sometimes help, but prevention is always the better solution. Not all leaf curling is a problem. Some tomato varieties naturally have slightly curled leaves, and it doesn't affect their growth or fruiting. I've grown tomato plants where I thought something was wrong, only to realize it was just a unique trait of the variety. If you're unsure whether the curling is natural, check the plant's overall health. If it's thriving and producing fruit, you likely have nothing to worry about. After experiencing nearly every possible cause of curling tomato leaves, I've developed a system to keep my plants healthy and prevent this issue from cropping up. I start with healthy, disease-resistant varieties and plant them in well-prepared soil. Mulching has been a game-changer for me, as it helps regulate soil temperature and moisture levels while keeping weeds at bay. Regular monitoring is also crucial. I make it a habit to walk through my garden every morning, checking for any signs of stress, pests, or disease. Catching problems early is the best way to stop them from escalating. At the end of the day, tomato leaves curling isn't the end of the world. It's simply your plant's way of signaling that something isn't quite right. By understanding the underlying causes and addressing them promptly, you can get your plants back on track and thriving in no time. I hope these tips help you diagnose and fix any issues with your tomato plants. And remember, gardening is a journey of learning and experimentation. Every challenge you face makes you a better gardener. If you found this guide helpful, please subscribe to Botanical Bliss and share it with your fellow gardening enthusiasts. Let's grow together. Happy planting!